The tale begins with Ichinos, who had a rough start in his early years. His friend Hanabi bullied him for as long as he could remember, turning insults into casual observations that he somehow just accepted. Even landing in a medical facility from stress didn't make her ease up. She sat by his bedside, calling him worthless and a failure of a significant other, yet she still refused to break up with him. "You're too nice," she claimed, "and I'm not about to waste a perfectly good doormat." That's when Ichinose snapped. He told her they should end the relationship. Hanabi was floored. Her mind briefly shut down. It wasn't always this bad, or maybe it was, and Ichinose was just slow to catch on. In the past, he had been playing in the sand and minding his own business when Hanabi wandered over and asked if he was making an elephant. He replied that he was, and then she just stared at him. No expression, just staring. It was unsettling. Everyone thought she was super nice, so she kept playing with him, and he began to wonder if he was the weird one. He even apologized, though he wasn't sure why. That pretty much set the tone for the rest of his life. Hanabi would throw insults at him, and he'd just take it. She made him take notes for it, and forced him to be her significant other, and if he didn't text her back quickly enough, he'd be called inconsiderate, heartless, and probably responsible for global warming too. Then came the high school years, also known as Hannah's tyranny era. One day she texted him, ordering him to meet her and her friends at the station. His stomach was already churning, and he thought about bailing, but he knew how that would end. So like a man with no survival instincts, he grabbed his umbrella and went. She texted again. "Be there in 5 minutes." He pointed out it was raining, which turned out to be a huge mistake. She hit him with the guilt trip of the century, making it sound like he was personally trying to give her pneumonia. Of course, she added the classic, "No one else cares about you, Saratane," for good measure. So off he went, running through the downpour like a protagonist in a tragic love story. Except way less cool. When he arrived expecting some grand emergency, he found her eating with her friends indoors. He texted to say he'd arrived, but she just told him he took too long and had to wait outside in the rain. And wait he did. For an hour. Turns out he wasn't just standing there like an idiot. He was a part of a bet. Hanabi and her friends had been gambling on whether or not he'd actually wait that long. Spoiler. He did. When she finally came out, she laughed at how waterlogged he was, comparing his hair to a wet mop, as if it were all just a fun joke. In front of everyone, she casually declared that he'd do anything she said. For the first time, he felt his stomach drop. He realized he should have left ages ago, maybe even years ago. When he finally told her they were done, she short-circuited again. Fast forward to the medical facility, and there she was, still in shock. She climbed onto his bed, acting like he had no right to end the relationship. "Breaking up with me! That's not how this works!" she exclaimed, going full dramatic mode, claiming no one else would ever date a loser like him. Maybe she was right, but for the first time in his life, Ichinose truly didn't care. Whether he ended up alone forever or not, one thing was certain. He was finally unshackled. Hanabi was pushed out of his clinic room as Ichinose asked her if she was happy now that she was rid of her ineffectual significant other. He shut the door behind her. Hannah pounded on the door, demanding an apology. A nurse came over and told her to quiet down because it was a medical facility. Hanabi apologized, saying they had a fight and it was her fault for losing her temper when Ichinose got sick. She said she was leaving now and bowed an apology for causing a scene. As she walked away, she thought about how socialites with good looks are always in high demand. She texted Ichinose, saying she was getting irritated and that he should apologize to her. She tried to manipulate him again, saying he had no other friends. She even scolded him for reading her messages. But this time he blocked her, realizing she twisted everything to make herself a victim. Back in his clinic bed, Ichinose remembered how Hanabi used to bully him about his looks when they were kids. She'd asked if he had ever looked in a mirror, saying that if she had a face like his, she'd never show it to anyone because people would make fun of her. She suggested he grow his hair out to cover his face. Ichinose lay in bed, thinking about how all of Hannah's words had crushed his self-esteem. Because of her, he had never understood his own worth. But now he decided to cut his hair after leaving the medical facility. That night, he fell asleep, finally liberated. After 13 years, his toxic relationship with Hanabi was officially over. When he returned to school, the reaction was instant. The girls went crazy. Ichinose looks amazing, and no one even recognizes him at first. They think he's a new student. Girls gush over his silky hair and sharp eyes, calling him their type. Overwhelmed by all the attention, Ichinose doesn't know how to react. His friend Haruta laughs and tells him people are talking about him. It's the first time in his life that someone has ever told him he looks good. Haruta points out that Ichino's used to have bangs that covered his face, and now that it's visible, he looks like a completely different person. They tell him he looks much better without the bangs, and that they never imagined their class had such a handsome guy. Haruta asks why he decided to change his look now. Ichinose jokes that he just felt like switching things up. Haruta compliments him, saying he looks much better this way, and Ichinose thanks him, feeling genuinely happy. Then he notices 3 girls crying while looking at him, which confuses him. Haruta laughs and tells him there's still a lot he needs to learn. Ichinose apologizes for making the class atmosphere weird by shutting himself off for so long. He expresses that he wants to talk more with people and hopes to get along with everyone. The class is happy to hear this, and they're excited that the serious guy with bangs turns out to be attractive after all. Later at lunch, they all sit together. Haruta admits that he never imagined Ichinose could hold a normal conversation, saying that if they had known, they would have hung out with him sooner. Ichinose apologizes again for being so withdrawn, and says he's happy to be talking with them now. Haruta tells him he's kind and good-looking. Ichinose just smiles, saying his personality and appearance are nothing special. But that smile drives the girls crazy. Haruta laughs, calling his looks a natural treasure, and warns him not to smile too much or he'll cause chaos. Ichinose finds it funny and laughs, making the girls swoon even more. Suddenly an angry Hanabi shows up. Ichinose recognizes that she's really mad. He doesn't care whether it's because he ignored her or because they broke up. It's no longer his problem. He tries to walk away, but she blocks him. He remembers how Hanabi used to smugly say that since she was the prettiest girl in school, it would be a scandal if people found out they were dating. She thought she was way out of his league and didn't want anyone questioning her taste, so she made him promise not to tell anyone. Haruta asks Ichinose if he knows her, and he just says he's never seen her before, then walks away. Hanabi storms off, furious at being completely rejected. Ichinose finishes his math work early and realizes he has 15 minutes to spare. His mind briefly drifts to his last run-in with Hanabi. She's probably still fuming somewhere, but honestly, he doesn't care. As he looks around pondering how to kill time, he notices a girl with glasses sitting nearby reading a book. A sudden gust of wind blows something out of her book, and without thinking, Ichinose picks it up and hands it back to her. She thanks him and he casually says, "No problem." But she looks a little surprised, and that's when it hits him. This is the first time they've ever spoken. Hanabi used to drill into his head that no girl would ever like him. She'd say she was only dating him out of pity, as if she was doing him a huge favor. Because of her, Ichinose never really learned how to talk to girls on his own. He always thought he would just make things awkward, so he avoided it altogether for years. Hanabi was pretty much the only girl he talked to, and even those conversations were more like one-sided lectures. Now, standing there, Ichinose admits to the girl that he's never really tried making friends before, and apologizes if he made her uncomfortable. To his surprise, she blushes and reassures him that everything's fine. She even introduces herself, hoping they can get along. Ichinose already knows who she is, and when he says so, she smiles, happy that they finally talked. Later, Yukishiro teases him about how everyone has been fawning over him since he cut his hair. Ichinose just shrugs it off, saying people will get over it soon enough, like they do with anything rare. Yukishiro laughs and calls him funny. Talking to her feels so different from talking to Hanabi. With Yukishiro, he doesn't have to overthink everything or worry about saying the wrong thing. He can just be himself, which is a nice change of pace. She mentions how she always wanted to talk to him because she noticed him taking care of the flowers and watering the plants after school. She thought he seemed like a kind person. Ichinose brushes it off, saying he was just killing time while waiting for Hanabi and that he's not as kind as she thinks. Yukishiro laughs and hands him her book, joking that he's going to be super popular now. Later, Ichinose heads to an arcade, tries his luck at a claw machine, and fails miserably. Instead, he decides to buy some food. Everywhere he goes, girls seem to flock to him, which still feels pretty surreal. He sits down to eat and realizes that now that he's broken up with Hanabi, he doesn't have to deal with her unceasing messages anymore. No more scolding for not replying quickly enough. Still, his heart races every time his phone rings. Old habits die hard, I guess. But he tells himself it will fade with time. She's never going to text him again. On the train ride home, he reflects on his day and realizes it was actually fun. School, the conversations with Yukishiro, hanging out with his classmates. It all felt important. He used to avoid people because of the things Hanabi drilled into his head, but now he feels ready to change. For the first time in years, he decides he wants to make as many friends as possible. As he walks home, he spots Hanabi on her phone. The moment she notices him, she quickly hides it behind her back and greets him as if nothing has changed. She starts complaining about how long he took, frustrated that she had to wait 2 whole hours for him. She reminds him, as if he forgot, that she taught him to take a different route whenever he wanted. Now she demands to know what he was thinking when he decided to break her rule. Ichinose doesn't respond and tries to walk past her, but she blocks his way. She can't believe he's ignoring her. Frustrated, he finally acknowledges her, but only to ask what she wants. She raises her voice, angry about how long she waited for him. It's just another attempt to guilt trip him, something she always did to force an apology from him. Without warning, her frustration shifts to his classmates. She rants about them, somehow tying it back to how they abandoned him, acting as if Ichinose should have predicted her reaction, like he's responsible for how she feels. Annoyed, he questions whether she seriously wasted 2 hours just to say all this. His indifference only makes her angrier, but he doesn't care. He states one final time that they're strangers now, and that her behavior is just irritating. Ichinose confirms that he's really breaking up with her, which makes Hanabi visibly upset. She warns him that his life won't be good without her, but he doesn't waver. He tells her that when they were together, he was in a miserable state. Frustrated, Hanabi grabs his arm and calls him a fool for getting carried away just because he had fun for a single day. She insists that this is his worst side, claiming that the people drawn to him only for his looks are worthless and that he's too blind to see it. Then she demands to know how he plans to live without her, reminding him that there's no one else he can talk to like this. But Ichinose disagrees. The classmates he spent the whole day with weren't anything like how Hanabi described. She doesn't have the power to decide who he spends time with anymore because between them, it's over. Hanabi snaps, saying he's incapable of doing things on his own and always needs someone to guide him. She demands that he apologize, claiming that his cold attitude frustrates her. She's used to it, she says, and even claims that it takes a big heart to forgive him, telling him to apologize properly. But the more she talks, the stronger Ichinose's resolve becomes. He refuses, making it clear that he doesn't need her in his life. Hanabi is astonished and gets angry, insisting that she's the one who wants to end the relationship. But Ichinose points out that they're already done, so it doesn't even matter. She shouts that she doesn't approve of this, but Ichinose is tired of the back and forth. He reminds her that she was always the one who talked about breaking up. Now that it's finally happening, he's had enough. He shoves her aside and tells her to leave. Hanabi storms off in one direction while Ichinose walks the other way. He sighs in relief, thinking she's finally accepted that it's over. Days pass since their last conversation at the park, and Ichinose enjoys the peace his life has brought him. Although life has been calm, he still sees Hanabi after school. Even when he ignores her, she always seems to appear in front of him. At first he thinks it's good she's not talking to him, but then he remembers all the time she made him wait in front of her house for random reasons. Fixing her hair, watching a TV show she liked, anything to keep him standing there. Now he arrives at the station earlier than usual and suddenly realizes that she might have been making him wait on purpose. That's when he notices her with a second-year student, the star of the track team. From the way they interact, it looks like they're dating. The guy playfully asks Hanabi how much she loves him using a sweet voice. She replies that she loves him more, teasing that he sounds like he's comparing her to someone. Hanabi then jokes that she'll cast a spell on him, ensuring that he only thinks about her. He calls her cute and promises to never look at another girl for the rest of his life. Ichinose, watching from a distance, thinks that the guy should look at other people. He decides that tomorrow he'll take an earlier train to avoid running into them. 2 days later, despite his plan, Ichinose ends up seeing them on the train. He wonders why they weren't there yesterday when he tried to avoid them. It's starting to feel too intentional to be a coincidence. He begins to suspect that Hannah wants him to see her with her new significant other, as if she's trying to prove a point. Ichinose shrugs it off, pretending not to care, which only makes Hanabi even more annoyed. The next day, he greets his classmates as usual, but for some reason, he feels drained, probably because of what he saw yesterday. He reminds himself to shake it off and wake up properly. The first period is PE, and Ichinose isn't thrilled about it. The gym teacher announces that they'll be deciding the relay race order for the upcoming sports festival. The boys get hyped, knowing that the fastest runner will be the anchor and the second fastest will take the second spot. Apparently being in one of those positions makes you popular with the girls, so everyone is suddenly very motivated. Seeing everyone so fired up, Ichinose realizes just how competitive they are. He's never really tested his own speed, because every year he just aimed for an average performance. He doesn't even know how fast he actually is. The only time he ever tried running seriously was in kindergarten when he won first place in a race and received a sticker as a prize. However, that moment didn't last long. Hanabi immediately ripped the sticker off him, saying she didn't like how he looked when he ran. Apparently he was too fast, like some kind of racehorse, and that wasn't cool. Ever since then, Ichinos has made a habit of slowing himself down on purpose. Every year, whenever the sports festival came around, Hanabi would remind him to take it easy because she hated not being the center of attention. He was sure that if he ever stole the spotlight from her, she'd despise him for it. But now, Ichinos doesn't care about that anymore. He's tired of hiding in the background. He just wants to be normal like everyone else. So this time, he decides not to hold back. When it's his group's turn, they all line up at the starting position. As soon as the race begins, Ichinos starts running at full speed, and wow, this is way too easy. He doesn't have to check his surroundings or adjust his pace. He just runs. By the time he crosses the finish line, he turns around to see how everyone else is doing, and oh, the other three are way behind him. The entire class is in shock. Even the gym teacher looks like he just saw a ghost. Ichinos is fast, record-breakingly fast. It turns out his speed is enough to shatter the district record, and he's shocked to realize just how quick he actually is. His classmates are beyond hyped, immediately saying that with him on their team, victory in the relay race is practically guaranteed. If Ichinos, the guy who can casually break records, runs as the anchor, their class will be unstoppable. And let's be real, the stakes are high. The winning class gets unshackled dessert coupons from the cafeteria, which for a bunch of hungry students is basically a golden ticket. Everyone is ready to taste sweet victory, literally, but Ichinos is still in disbelief and tries to downplay it, thinking maybe his run was just a fluke. He's not even in a sports club, so it's not like he has trained for this. He apologizes, saying he might not be the best choice for anchor, which immediately sends his classmates into a panic. Some of them actually grab onto his legs, as if he's about to board a spaceship and never return. Seeing how desperate they are, Ichinos figures there's no point in refusing anymore. He agrees to be the anchor, but with the disclaimer, he can't guarantee a win. If they're fine with that, he'll do his best. The class erupts in cheers. They're way too excited about this. For the first time, Ichinos feels important. People genuinely want him on their team, and that feeling is kinda nice. They even joke that he's such a good guy that everyone is falling for him, and the girls can't stop gushing about how ridiculously cool he is. Fast runner, check. Decent guy, check. Good looking, double check. It's like he just stepped out of some sports anime, and they're all swooning over him. It's hilarious because just a few days ago he was basically a loner. Now he's surrounded by people, and Ichinos can't help but notice how much better his life has gotten since breaking up with Hanabi. It's almost comical how things turned around. Later, Yukishiro nudges him, pointing out how he's basically the center of attention again. She even asks if he's ever thought about becoming an athlete. Ichinos just shrugs, saying he never really saw a point to his speed outside a gym class. He tells her not to worry. Everyone will get bored of him soon enough. Yukishiro is caught off guard by how chill he is about it. She insists he's practically the school's hero right now, and even asks for running tips. Ichinos has no clue how to teach someone to be naturally fast, but before he can respond, Yukishiro suddenly states she wants to skip the sports festival altogether, leaving him shocked. He wishes he could help, but before he can say anything, Huki suddenly appears and asks Ichinose for a minute of his time. Ichinose recognizes Huki as the guy who set the second fastest record earlier, only for Kirigaya to casually crush it as if it were nothing. Curious, Ichinose wonders what Huki wants. Huki gets straight to the point, asking Ichinose if he plans to go all out in the relay race and aim for victory. Ichinose is caught off guard. He wasn't planning to push himself to the limit for this competition. However, Huki is dead serious. He admits he has been training for months to be the anchor, only for Ichinose to swoop in and take the spot effortlessly. At first, Ichinose thinks Huki wants him to step aside, but it turns out that's not the case. Huki accepts his loss, but insists that Ichinose must take this race seriously because Class B's anchor is Kirigaya. Cue the dramatic music. Ichinose immediately connects the dots. Kirigaya, the star athlete from the track club, the guy with the annoyingly perfect face, and the same guy he saw at the train station with Hanabi. Now it all makes sense. Ichinose asks Huki why he is so determined to beat Kirigaya, and with a bitter laugh, Huki admits that Kirigaya stole his girlfriend. Ichinose is astonished, and even Yukishiro, who has been listening quietly, looks shocked. Huki clarifies that he doesn't hate Kirigaya for it. He blames himself for being too weak to hold on to his relationship. What really ticks him off is how Kirigaya just dropped his ex for a first-year girl as if she meant nothing. That, Huki says, is something he can't forgive. Ichinosis finally understands. Huki ran into Kirigaya earlier that day and told him they were finalizing the relay team lineup. Kirigaya smirked and said he would be his team's anchor, adding with his usual cocky grin that just like he beat Huki in love, he would beat him in this race too. Huki is fuming and desperate for revenge. Ichinosis realized that if Kirigaya is as fast as everyone says, he needs to take this seriously. He considers for a moment and thinks that since it's so personal, maybe he should be the anchor. Seeing him agree makes Huki wildly excited, but Ichinosis reminds him that it only works if they actually win. Huki nods but then drops a bombshell. Kirigaya holds the current and district record. Ichinosis begins to doubt if he can pull this off, but Huki insists that he has the potential to beat Kirigaya with the right training. Ichinosis wonders if simply improving his own speed will be enough, considering it's a relay race that depends on the whole team. Huki confirms he has already compared their class times to Class B's. While performance can vary, it will ultimately come down to the battle between the anchors. Huki begs Ichinosis to train with him for the next 2 weeks. Seeing how serious he is, Ichinosis agrees, but on one condition. If Huki wants his help, he has to return the favor. Huki immediately asks what he wants, and Ichinosis smirks, saying he wants Huki to teach Yukishiro how to run. Yukishiro is completely caught off guard, but Huki nods. It's a deal. They agree to start training the next day, and just like that, Ichinosis has officially passed the responsibility of teaching Yukishiro onto Huki. The three of them are now on a mission to crush Kirigaya in the relay race. The next morning, Ichinosis meets up with Huki and Yukishiro for their first training session. It's the first time he's really hung out with classmates like this. Normally, Hanabi would be watching his every move, but now he feels liberated. As they warm up, Hanabi watches from a distance. Just as the group is about to begin, Huki, fired up, declares that they will take down Class B and put Kirigaya in his place. They decide to help Yukishiro win because Kirigaya, who is currently Hanabi's partner, stole Huki's girlfriend. Clearly still salty about it, Huki warns them that they need to be careful and tells everyone to warm up properly. During the warm-up, Ichinosis trips and falls. Yukishiro asks if he laughed at her, and he replies that she looked cute, which makes her blush. She then asks if he's a natural flirt, which completely confuses him. Meanwhile, Huki dramatically starts crying about how they dare flirt in front of someone whose love life has been completely destroyed. Ichinosis, trying to be helpful, drags Huki away while Yukishiro times her own run with a stopwatch. After finishing, she's completely out of breath. And Ichinosis thinks her training is going well, since her running times are improving. Still, he doesn't expect big results right away since they just started training. Then Yukishiro comes running back, panting heavily, and Ichinosis once again finds her adorable as she teases him, calling him a total charmer. However, he still doesn't get it. Meanwhile, Huki continues to cry dramatically about their flirting. Ichinosis calms him down, and their training continues every morning and night. Eventually, Hanabi appears during their train ride with none other than Kirigaya. Ichinosis thinks it must be a big deal for her to wake up an hour early, especially since she used to put so much effort into her appearance. Now, her hair is a mess. Suddenly, Hanabi steps away from Kirigaya and storms toward Ichinosis, yelling at him for avoiding her. Last time, she told him that a plan made by someone as dumb as him wouldn't work, but now she realizes she was wrong. Hanabi knew she would be face-to-face with Ichinosis every day, and Ichinosis told her she didn't have to wake up so early, at least not early enough to have a bad hair day. Panicking, Hanabi grabbed her hair and spun around to look at her reflection in the mirror Kirigaya was holding. Ichinosis realized she hadn't even noticed her messy hair until now. Quickly regaining her composure, Hanabi mentioned that she heard Ichinosis would be the anchor for the race. Ichinosis was taken aback, exclaiming, "Wait, what?" She then yelled at him to take things more seriously. After a moment, she dramatically pointed at him and proclaimed an ultimatum. Since he ignored her and kept running despite her telling him to stop, she vowed to humiliate him for it. She bragged that Kirigaya was the anchor for Class B, claiming he was going to do his best. With a confident smile, she taunted Ichinosis to get ready to eat her dust, and then she said goodbye, telling him he could do whatever he wanted to try to fight back. The two of them left, practically sparking with rivalry. Ichinosis sighed in relief and continued training with his team in the mornings, after school, and even on their days off. They trained as much as possible. After a long day of practice, Hasawei finally called it a day, praising everyone for their effort. Exhausted, Kiro flopped onto the ground, completely spent. The three of them sat together, realizing that tomorrow was the big day. Hasi reassured them, stating that their times had improved significantly and he was confident they would do great at the festival. Even though the race wasn't a direct showdown, Hasi insisted they were going to crush Kirigaya. Ichinose had shown talent since day one, training non-stop for 2 whole weeks. He thanked Hasi for the kind words and commented that he wished they had more time to train. Hui, feeling emotional, suddenly burst into tears. A classic Hoi moment, and thanked both of them, saying he truly meant it. He admitted that he couldn't sleep because of Kirigaya, his ex-significant other, who still haunted his thoughts. However, since they started training, the only thing on his mind had been improving his running time, which surprisingly helped him get some real sleep. He thanked them again. Yukishiro, catching the sentimental mood, said she was the one who should be grateful because, thanks to them, she had improved a lot in running. She smiled and expressed her gratitude, saying she appreciated the time they had spent together as real teammates. For a moment, they sat in comfortable silence. Then Ichinose admitted that spending time with them had been much more enjoyable than he expected. Hui, however, made it clear that his hatred for Kirigaya was still very much alive. Yukiro remarked that she initially thought she was mistaken, but Kirigaya had changed. He looked fresher, almost like Ichinose, which surprised her. She quickly clarified that it was just the hair, everything else was completely different. Hui then mentioned that Kirigaya had to cut his hair when he started dating someone new, and his ex actually dumped him because she preferred his hair. He felt like an idiot for thinking Kirigaya might have chopped his hair just to spite him. Hugging Ichinose, Hui told him to laugh all he wanted, but Ichinose simply replied that no one had the right to mock someone who loved with all their heart. Hearing this, Hui broke down, calling Ichinose a good guy. These were the first friends he, the main character, had made. Later, Yukishiro praised Ichinose, and when he asked why, she listed all the moments that showed his kindness. Moving closer with a bright smile, she declared that this side of him was wonderful. She happily stepped closer, declaring that she found that side of him amazing. The sudden closeness made them both blush. Apologizing, she repeated that getting to know him made her realize how wonderful he was, and that thought made her happy. They both turned red as Ichinose admitted his embarrassment. Yukira, feeling the same, insisted she just wanted to express her feelings. Flustered again, they quickly wrapped up the conversation, agreeing they needed to give it their all the next day. She waved goodbye and headed off on her own, and Ichinose did the same. Later that night, lying in bed, Ichinose remembered what Yukishiro and Hui told him earlier and how much time he had spent with them. He realized he couldn't thank them enough. For the first time, he experienced something completely new. He couldn't sleep because his mind was racing, but not about running. He sat up in bed, thinking, so this is what that feels like. The next morning, the whole team was pumped and determined to win. Finally, the day of the sports festival arrived. Ichinose remembered his friend's words from before and reflected on the time they spent together, feeling grateful all over again. The festival kicked off with a tug-of-war competition, with Hui leading the charge, followed by a tire-carrying race, and then a ball-throwing event led by Ryo. The crowd cheered loudly, hyping up the competitors. Ichinose realized his event, the jump rope competition, was coming up soon, so he headed over. That's when he saw Hanabi in a full cheerleader uniform. Kirigaya, acting overly cutesy, called Hanabi by her nickname, saying in a sugary voice that he couldn't wait for the cheerleading performances. He even complimented her, saying she looked absolutely adorable. Suddenly he felt confident that he could win anything. His teammate felt the energy and agreed. Hanabi, playing up her cuteness, asked him to win first place for her. Kirigaya stepped in confidently, declaring that of course he would win. There was no way he was losing. Hanabi smiled and cheered for them, saying she hoped they wouldn't lose in the relay race. As the main event was about to begin, the announcer called for the first runners to take their positions. Huki stepped up, determined, and told the team that he was going to sprint as fast as possible in the first stage, before passing the baton off to them. Yukishiro gave some last-minute encouragement to Hasi and Ichinose, telling them to give it their all. The race began, and Huki took off running as if his life depended on it. Yukishiro cheered loudly as each runner gave their best effort, passing the baton down the line. As it was almost Ichinose's turn, she started to panic. Quickly, Ichinose told her to stay calm and just do what they practiced. Out of nowhere, she turned to him and asked him to hold her hand for a second. Without hesitation, he reached out and she clasped his hands tightly. After taking a deep breath, she smiled and said that now she felt like she could do this. She thanked him, stepped into position, and prepared for her moment to shine. When the baton reached her hand, she took off running. Hasi yelled at her to remember the training while Ichinose cheered her on. She pushed herself to the limit, running as fast as she could while keeping a steady pace. The other runners were starting to fall behind. She passed the baton to the next teammate and stumbled toward Ichinose, still out of breath. Ichinose smiled and told her, "You killed it out there!" "That was amazing!" Yukishiro, still catching her breath, said she heard him cheering for her even from far away. She thought it was incredible that he was shouting so loudly just to support her. It felt like some kind of miracle. With a determined grin, she proclaimed that she would be cheering for him with everything she had. Ichinose glanced at Huki, who had started the race strong, at his teammates who passed the baton down the line, and at Yukishiro, who gave it her all. He suddenly felt the weight of his position as the anchor. He needed to deliver a great result for them. As Ichinose watched the race unfold, he noticed that Clasby had taken a massive lead while his own class was struggling to hold on to second place. His opponent seemed confident, and one of Kirigaya's teammates sneered with amusement, questioning why someone like Ichinose was chosen as the anchor. He even mocked Huki, pointing out how his performance had declined ever since his breakup. Meanwhile, Kirigaya's team moved seamlessly, passing the baton effortlessly. He took off with a smirk, accelerating like a rocket. Ichinose watched in frustration as his team fell to third place. By the time the second place team's anchor started running, Kirigaya was already halfway through the track. Finally, Ichinose's teammate rushed in, passing him the baton. His moment had arrived. With every ounce of strength, he launched himself forward. All the hours of training and relentless effort had led to this. Keeping Yukishiro's advice in mind, he steadied his breathing and focused on pushing forward. Within seconds, he overtook the second-place runner, closing the gap. But just catching up wasn't enough. He had to win. Up ahead, Kirigaya remained in the lead, but Ichinose was closing in fast. The sudden shift in pace sent a ripple of shock through the crowd. Gasps filled the air, and all eyes locked onto the track. Kirigaya finally noticed the attention and turned around, only to find Ichinose right behind him. Panic set in. Before Kirigaya could react, Ichinose surged past him, taking the lead with ease. The crowd erupted into cheers, and his teammates rushed to the finish line in pure exhilaration. Meanwhile, Kirigaya was left trailing behind, seething with frustration. Dazed by the overwhelming excitement, he barely had time to process the moment. Among the chaos, he caught sight of Yukishiro beaming with pride, and Huki wiping away tears of joy. For the first time, he truly felt it. This is what happiness looks like. Huki, still emotional, threw himself at Ichinose in a hug, and the rest of the team gathered around, reveling in their victory. At a distance, Hanabi quietly sipped from her water bottle, her expression unreadable. As the celebration continued and the cheers grew louder, the entire class lifted their triumphant anchor into the air once more. At that moment, a girl commented that the runner from the other class was actually part of the track club yet had still lost. She scoffed, saying that just having a good-looking face wasn't enough and that he deserved to lose because of his arrogant attitude. The protagonist listened, noting how annoyed she sounded. It was pretty obvious why she was his girlfriend, but he didn't think she was upset just to defend her significant other. He went for his friend rather than trying to get back at Hanabi. After the race, his friend casually mentioned that they were all meeting up for karaoke later. Our protagonist assumed that it was a class gathering and realized he had never actually been to one before. Deep down, he hoped someone would say, "Hey, let's meet up." But instead, his friend insisted that the party wouldn't be complete without the guest of honor. Him. As he considered going, he suddenly spotted Hanabi walking with another guy. Instinctively, he and Yukishiro ducked behind cover, not wanting to run into her right after defeating her team in the relay race. It would feel way too awkward to interact with her now. Meanwhile, a conversation unfolded between Hanabi and the track club guy. He complained that he wasn't feeling his best today, that his body felt heavy, and that was why he couldn't perform at his peak. However, he was confident he would shine in the inter-school competitions. Hanabi raised an eyebrow at his excuse, clearly unimpressed. She questioned what he meant by next time, and was honestly shocked by his audacity. Without hesitation, she reminded him that whatever they had, if anything, was over. The guy looked genuinely confused, as if this was news to him. He seemed to believe they were actually dating. When she scoffed at him, he brought up how she always wanted to walk to school with him and would hold onto his arm, as if that somehow proved his point. Rolling her eyes, Hanabi shut him down instantly. She told him he was clueless, probably too muscle-brained to think straight, and made it clear he was never her significant other. Then almost casually she mentioned there was only one person she would actually consider dating. Curious, he asked who it was, but she waved him off, telling him it was none of his business. Desperate to salvage whatever he thought they had, he pleaded for another chance, even admitting that he broke up with his last girlfriend for her. He even went as far as changing his hairstyle to match her preferences. Hanabi wasn't having any of it. She actually laughed, pointing out how typical it was for him to assume everything was his choice when he never even asked what she wanted in the first place. She didn't just call him worthless, she also made it clear he was being overly dramatic, turning this into an unnecessary scene. At this point, her patience was gone. She told him to back off, flatly stating that she didn't need him anymore and didn't want him around. With a sharp, sarcastic tone, she thanked him for absolutely nothing. The guy stammered, trying to get her to stop, but she cut him off completely, telling him to disappear. As she turned to leave, she suddenly noticed our protagonist hiding nearby with Yukishiro. Their eyes met, and her expression shifted instantly. Without missing a beat, she walked over and demanded to know what he was doing there. She assumed he must have come just to watch her humiliation, mocking the idea that this was the end of anything. In her mind, everything that just happened was still that worthless guy's fault. She glared at the protagonist, convinced that one day he would regret letting her go. But instead of reacting to her anger, he stayed calm, refusing to get caught up in her drama. Hanabi smirked, warning him that giving up so easily meant he wouldn't have to deal with her anymore, but he'd better be ready for her revenge. With that, she turned and walked away. After she was gone, the protagonist turned to Yukishiro and apologized for making her witness such a weird conversation. She brushed it off, saying it wasn't a big deal, then asked if he was okay. While she admitted it was a little uncomfortable, she appreciated that he checked in on her. Later that evening, our protagonist joined his friends at karaoke. The energy was high, and everyone was buzzing about the events of the day. One of them brought up how amazing the race was, praising everyone's performance, especially that of the protagonist. The whole group cheered for him, calling him the MVP of the day. The conversation quickly shifted to how unbelievable his performance was, how he managed to push past his limits, and just thinking about it made their hearts race all over again. Without a doubt, they agreed he was the highlight of the day, as always. The protagonist remained humble, insisting there was no need to thank him since it was really the entire class's effort that led to their victory. His words caught everyone off guard, and they were genuinely moved by his attitude. A close friend pointed out that most of the class showed up to the karaoke gathering, which wasn't always the case. The protagonist, still getting to know some of them, noticed that the class representatives seemed to be the type who made sure no one felt left out. At one point, he ended up talking with Yukishiro about a beautiful song that was playing. He agreed that the lyrics were really touching. Just then, Hasegawa enthusiastically started singing, dedicating the song to the protagonist as a symbol of their friendship. Hasegawa took a moment to open up, admitting that everyone already knew his ex had left him for someone else. However, instead of letting it break him, he saw Eos as the one who helped him get back at that undeserving thief, and he was grateful for that. The other classmates were caught off guard upon realizing that not only did the protagonist win the race, but he also helped a friend through a difficult situation. As he explains his reasons for agreeing to help, the group is even more impressed by his kindness toward her. It's not just his talent that stands out. His humility and sincerity make him even more admirable. They begin to see him as someone with an effortless charm that seems almost unreal, and how naturally likable he is. Yukishiro chimes in, telling him he's incredible, a true hero. It's no surprise that everyone looks up to him. Even she can't help but admire him. She confesses she had an amazing day and admits that when she saw him run, she unconsciously followed his gaze, which made her chest tighten in a way that almost hurt. Ikno finds himself lost in thought, trying to process the strange feeling he's experiencing. At that moment, he realizes he doesn't completely understand it. The two fall into a comfortable silence, simply enjoying the music and watching their classmates sing and have fun. As he takes in the lively atmosphere, he feels genuinely happy. After a while, he decides to step outside for a bit to clear his head. Outside, he overhears a group of girls from his class chatting. Their conversation quickly turns mean-spirited as they begin gossiping about Manaji-san. Their tone drips with annoyance as they complain that she won't stop hanging around Shin. One of them goes further, making a cruel comparison and saying she acts like an attention-seeking dog in heat. Erika agrees, scoffing at how Manaji clearly thinks she's more popular than she is, when in reality, most people find her annoying. Ikno listens, his expression hardening as he realizes they're talking about someone from their own class. It then clicks in his mind. He remembers how Yukishiro had started talking to him, but he assumes she's not actually trying to get closer to him. Meanwhile, the group of girls continues bad-mouthing Manaji, calling them all pigs, yet they seem fine with Yukishiro being adored. One of them even says that only 2D fictional men are acceptable, and that real guys need to try harder. Although Echino isn't particularly close to Yukishiro, it still bothers him that they're talking behind her back. Back in the karaoke room, he finds Minaguchi-san singing while the rest of the group wraps up their night. Someone comments that it was fun to have the whole class together for the first time and suggests doing it again. The guys then decide that the next gathering should be just for them, and Echino agrees. As he steps outside, he feels a strange sensation, almost as if he saw a shadow moving. He brushes it off, thinking that it's just his imagination or maybe a stray cat. The girl with glasses asks if she can walk with him part of the way home. Without hesitation, he agrees, saying he wants to make sure she gets home safely since it's already late, and he doesn't want to leave a girl walking alone at night. She playfully questions why he always says such sweet things so effortlessly, joking that her heart can't handle it. Her face turns slightly red as their classmates wave goodbye off to the side. Meanwhile, Hanabi watches the scene unfold, thinking to herself that Senpai belongs to her. She doesn't want anyone else to discover his charm. If he keeps acting this way, he's bound to become the target of every girl around. Hanabi smirks to herself, deciding that she needs to take something back from all these guys. Her sinister laugh suggests that she's already planning something to put an end to his fun. The next day at school, everything seems normal at first. Students greet each other and chat as usual. But suddenly, an unsettling silence takes over the room. Their teacher steps forward with a serious expression, announcing that the class has received a letter accusing them of bullying. She looks disappointed as she explains that a student has been struggling so much that they no longer want to come to school. Ikno realizes that the only person he really talks to is Yukishiro, who sits next to him along with the more popular guys in class. He barely interacts with most of his classmates, and he doesn't know much about the girl in question. Then he notices an empty seat. It must belong to Erika, who had been complaining in the hallway. He recalls how harsh her words were that night. Given what she's been through, maybe her reaction makes more sense. At the time, it was hard to see things from her perspective. The teacher asks the guilty party to come forward, but no one speaks up. Ikno assumes no one wants to admit it. The whole situation feels like a mystery scene, and their teacher seems fresh out of training, perhaps even a little unsure of how to handle this. Silence lingers in the classroom. No one wants to be the first to move. The teacher continues explaining that in some schools, bad teachers just label someone as a bully and call it a day. But that's not how things are done here. However, she warns them that if the bullying situation isn't resolved, their much-anticipated school trip might get cancelled. A wave of unease spreads through the room. No one can believe something as big as the trip could be at risk. But in the end, no one confesses. 5 days pass, and then another letter arrives at the school. This time, the teacher reads it aloud, revealing a name. She pauses, expecting the student to step forward. When no one does, she states that if they won't confess, she'll reveal the name herself. She calls out Yukishiro and asks her to follow her to the student guidance office. The teacher mentions the name in the letter and explains that they will need to discuss the situation with the academic coordinator. Ichin notices the sadness on her face and recognizes the disappointment in his expression as well. Holding back tears, she leads him out of the classroom and he watches her from a distance. Accusations then start flying, and Yukishiro is blamed for harassing another girl. This sparks a heated discussion in class about whether she actually did it. Some students say she was close to Didio Ai, while others claim they never saw them together. Many insist that she was always quiet, lost in her books, while Didoi spent time chatting about anime with the otaku group. To them, it didn't seem like the two had any real connection. Ichin's training partner approaches and asks if he knows anything about what's going on. He admits that the whole situation feels strange, almost like a classic case of school bullying. He points out that if the teacher hadn't stepped in, the students might not have even noticed something was wrong. He then considers the possibility that the accusations could be true, which shocks the others. However, he also finds the letter suspicious. The athlete from the track club wonders if it could be a lie, and he admits he isn't sure. As they discuss the situation, Yukishiro enters the classroom looking visibly upset. She quietly takes her seat, glancing toward Ichin, who is lost in thought. She slips him a note insisting that she didn't harass anyone and asking him to believe her. Their eyes meet, and he reassures her, letting her know that he trusts her. Tears well up in Yukishiro's eyes, and seeing how heartbroken she is, he resolves to get to the bottom of this. Later, the three of them gather to talk, realizing that the situation is only getting more complicated. During their last class of the day, the teacher informs everyone that Yukishiro has denied all the accusations against her, claiming she did nothing wrong. Despite this, the classroom remains tense. The teacher then reminds them that a letter was sent to the school specifically accusing Yukishiro of harassment. The students are instructed to write down their thoughts on a piece of paper, and are warned that if the issue isn't resolved, the school trip will be cancelled. As everyone processes this, the teacher instructs them to work together to find a solution. Ichinos realize that things are spiraling out of control. Unfortunately, they can't rely on the teacher to fix this. If they want answers, they'll have to figure it out themselves. Hasi mutters that the teachers are worthless and only seem good at throwing accusations around. Yukishiro apologizes to the two of them, but Ichin reassures her that none of this is her fault. He adds that if they go over all the information carefully, they might be able to solve this. He knows it's a tough situation for her, but that's exactly why they need to stick together. Yukishiro thanks him, and he wishes he could do more to ease her worries. As they consider their next moves, Ichinos inquires what the teacher mentioned about the letter and whether Yukishiro has any clue who delivered it. She discloses that it was Diodoji who reported her, and that the second letter was personally handed over during a school visit. She believes the situation intensified because the supposed victim herself brought up Yukishiro's name. Apparently, the girl stated that if it had been anyone else, it wouldn't have been as challenging to manage. The protagonist begins connecting the pieces. For some unexplained reason, Diodoji is certain that Yukishiro harassed her due to something she did. Regardless, he determines that they need to speak to the victim directly. If they want to reach the truth, visiting Diodoji is their only option. Ichinose proposes checking Diodoji's residence. He observes that her address should be on the class roster. He recalls how she maintained she never harassed anyone, but uncertainty lingers in his thoughts. It's conceivable she unintentionally wounded someone without being aware of it, since he has never conversed with her. The likelihood of her targeting him seems minimal, but to discover the truth, they need to speak with her face to face. They arrive at Diodoji's residence, but she immediately shouts at them to leave. Fury fills her voice as she accuses the teacher of shielding someone who verbally attacked others daily. She demands a public apology from Ichinos, refusing to pardon him otherwise. The request strikes him as peculiar. She isn't even present to receive an apology. So who is it truly for? And what is she hoping to achieve? A sudden awareness dawns on him. The sensation creeping up his spine is identical to the one he experienced at the karaoke establishment. Without hesitation, he urges Yukishiro to return immediately before taking off running. As he sprints, he catches someone's hand. It's Hanabi. She reacts with surprise, questioning his urgency. Suspicion settles in as he wonders if Hanabi is implicated in Diodoji's accusations. Her presence here feels too convenient, and her expression carries a hint of amusement, as if she's enjoying the chaos. She observes him closely, seemingly amused by his desperation. The memory of their past conversation resurfaces in his mind, the one where he had declared he never wanted to see her again. Yet now it feels like she's been waiting for him to chase after her. He remains indifferent to her provocations, staying focused on the situation at hand. His mind pieces together the events. Diodoji's sudden accusations, the suspicious timing, and Hanabi's calculated involvement. The confrontation escalates as he presses her for answers, cornering her against the metal fence. Her flushed face catches his attention, but he dismisses it as unimportant. What matters is the truth behind her actions. His thoughts return to her childhood tendencies. He has always known her ability to deceive those around her, manipulating situations with ease. His suspicions solidify as he considers the possibility that Hanabi had planned everything from the start. She seems pleased with the chaos she has stirred, her demeanor unaffected by the weight of the situation. Her involvement in Diodoji's actions becomes clear. Though she never explicitly ordered anything, she planted the idea, offering the perfect opportunity for manipulation. Diodoji's vulnerability had been an easy target, and Hanabi had simply guided her down a path that led to turmoil. Her interest in his class wasn't random. It was intentional, a calculated effort to shake things up. He realized that the strange unease he had felt at the karaoke establishment had likely been her doing as well. The situation begins to make sense, yet the weight of it lingers. He acknowledged the reality. She thrives in manipulation, and once again, she's managed to pull the strings from the shadows. He considers exposing Hanabi's involvement to the school, but she only laughs. He realizes she would never willingly testify before the teacher, though persuading Diodoji might still be an option. However, in his mind, the main culprit remains Diodoji, and confronting Hanabi changes nothing. Hanabi suggests they take advantage of the situation and leave together, claiming they have plenty to discuss. He clarifies that she is mistaken. He chased after her only to talk and resolve the problems within the class. Her demeanor shifts as she insists that can't be all. If he isn't furious with her or seeking revenge for what she did, then she can't understand his reasoning. He reflects on the situation, recognizing that Hanabi orchestrated everything just to get his attention. Despite this, he cannot forgive her for hurting Yukishiro out of selfish motives. However, if he were to blame her entirely and lash out, that would only satisfy her. He wonders what would be the most effective way to handle this. Deciding on a different approach, he tells her it's time to make new friends, just like he has. Hanabi immediately reacts with defiance, yelling that such a thing will never happen. Ignoring her outburst, he walks away, realizing that unlike Yukishiro's genuine tears, Hanabi's tears do nothing to move him. After all, they're just an act. After talking to Hanabi, Ichinos returns to Yukishiro, quietly burdened by everything on his mind. He reflects on how he had a falling out with someone and cut ties, only to realize later that he was the cause of it all. That realization weighs heavily on him, knowing he's brought pain to those around him. Standing in front of Yukishiro, he bows deeply, apologizing with sincerity. She looks surprised, but listens, while he quietly says he's really sorry, his guilt clear in his voice and eyes. This moment marks the beginning of his change, the first step in facing the harm he's caused. As Ichinos bows in apology, Yukishiro suddenly grabs his hands and tells him to raise his head. Her voice is firm but kind. She looks straight at him and says he's not in the wrong at all. Her eyes filled with quiet strength soften as she gazes at him, gently reassuring him without hesitation. Ichinos stood in front of Yukishiro, who gently asked if he was being chased by the same person he had a fight with, and he replied it looked like she was still keeping tabs on them. Yukishiro had also heard that the girl was the one who made Diodoji tell lies. As she asked what he was planning to do, Ichinos answered firmly that he would handle Diodoji himself, and just needed one day. Yukishiro looked at him seriously and offered to help too. While Yukishiro watched him with concern, Ichinos told her to leave everything to him, his eyes calm but firm. He had been thinking about how to solve the problem ever since talking with Hanabi, but admitted he might have to use underhanded methods. Looking at Yukishiro, he quietly apologized, saying he couldn't let her get involved. Even if she felt uneasy, he promised he would definitely do something about it. Yukishiro looked at him gently and asked if the girl he had a fight with was okay, but quickly added that she was fine herself. Ichinos didn't answer right away. Deep down, he hadn't told anyone yet about the psychological abuse he suffered from Hanabi. If he said it now, it would only fix the label on him as her victim, making it permanent, even if that was the truth. His hand tightened slightly, the weight of everything still lingering. Ichinos looked at Yukishiro thinking it would be wrong to tell her about his own problems, especially when she's in a worse situation. He believed the kind Yukishiro would still try to comfort him, saying it wasn't his fault, but he didn't want that. He just wanted to avoid it if possible. While Yukishiro stood quietly with a gentle face, holding her hand to her chest, listening without judgment, Ichinos knew Yukishiro had the right to understand why Hanabi would act like that, especially since this trouble started because of her. He promised himself to talk to Yukishiro about everything between him and Hanabi, but only after it was all resolved. As Yukishiro looked at him with gentle curiosity, he quietly strengthened his resolve. The next day after school, he finally prepared to face her. Ichinos stood in the hallway and noticed a girl approaching, calling out, "Agawa-san!" Startled, Agawa Marii flinched and paused mid-step, gripping her school bag tightly. He stepped closer, calm but serious. She stared at him quietly, tense, her eyes fixed on his. Ichinos looked at her and said he'd like to ask about Diodoji, then gently asked if she minded. Agawa Marii said nothing yet, but her expression showed surprise and a hint of suspicion. It was a quiet start, but something was already stirring. Ichinos stopped Agawa in the hallway, his voice calm but firm. She froze, surprised he was talking to her. He asked about Diodoji, saying he saw her with her at karaoke. He wanted to get in touch and hoped Agawa could share Diodoji's social media account. She stared at him tense, saying it was against the rules, but Ichinos didn't back down. He knew that. yet he needed to contact her no matter what. Agawa's eyes narrowed. She didn't answer, but something in her face said this wasn't the end of it. Something was about to start. Ichinose faced her directly, his voice steady as he pointed out that she had been with Diodoji, so she should know the truth, that the bullying against Yukishiro was a lie. Agawa's expression wavered, caught off guard. He promised he wouldn't reveal where he got the information, and asked if she'd be willing to testify. When she hesitated, he stepped closer and lowered his head respectfully, asking for her help. Yukishiro was deeply hurt, so please lend me a hand. Agawa didn't respond right away, but her wide eyes and stiff posture showed the pressure sinking in. The choice was now hers. She looked away and said it was impossible, asking why she should care if Yukishiro was in trouble. Cold and distant, she added. She had no interest in things not involving her. Ichinose stayed quiet. She said it was Erika's problem, not hers. When asked if she was friends with Diodoji, she corrected him. Just seatmates. Maybe there's room to interpret, but she wouldn't cover for her. Her face stayed unreadable, like she'd already moved on. Ichinose asked if she could help since she didn't seem to hate Diodoji. Agawa stayed calm, saying it wasn't for Erika's sake, but for her own reasons, and if she stayed quiet, it meant less trouble. Ichinose could tell she wasn't the type to act like a friend, but maybe, just maybe, she'd accept if the situation fit her. Still, when he asked again, she gave him a flat look, making it clear she wouldn't help just because he asked. That's when Ichinose sighed, knowing he'd have to use the trump card he'd saved for last. Ichinose said he knew she wouldn't help, and so he offered a deal instead. He mentioned she was alone with Diodoji after the festival near the karaoke. Agawa froze, shocked and speechless, asking how he knew. Calm and serious, Ichinose had just played his final card. He walked up calmly, saying he knew she wouldn't help, even if he asked, so he offered to make an exchange instead. Agawa looked surprised, unsure what he meant. He leaned closer, then suddenly brought up the karaoke after the sports festival, asking if she was alone with Diodoji in the hallway near the toilets. Her eyes widened as if caught off guard, her voice shaking slightly. Ichinose calmly said he just happened to be within earshot, watching her freeze in panic, struggling to ask how he knew. She stared wide-eyed as he reminded her about overhearing her and her friend bad-mouthing classmates by name. His voice stayed calm, but his words were sharp, warning what might happen if he told everyone. Her face turned pale, completely stunned. He leaned in slightly, reminding her that the people she insulted were key members of their class, and if she dared to confront them, this school year would turn very difficult for her. She panicked and asked if he had proof, but Ichinose stayed calm and said he didn't need any. Her face turned pale as she realized no one would believe her even if she denied it. He explained that even if the others didn't bully her, they would still avoid her. The nearby girls looked on unsure and everything felt tense. Then Ichinose leaned in slightly and said one quiet line that made her freeze like everything around her had just shifted. Ichinose sat quietly watching as the mood in the classroom shifted. Marie, with her cold and unreadable eyes, asked what was meant by the sudden doubt. The girl next to her insisted Yukishiro had never bullied anyone. Yukishiro even said it herself. Still, Morai pressed on calmly but firmly, questioning the atmosphere of the class. Yukishiro looked down, her expression heavy. The trust that once seemed clear was now tangled in silence and second-guessing. Even the quiet ones were starting to wonder. Marie stood tense, her face pale as she warned that rumors couldn't be stopped once they spread. No one cared where the truth was, only what people believed. Ichinose, calm but serious, said unless someone spoke up with real proof, it would just hurt everyone. Marie clutched her head, clearly shaken, and said she didn't want to get involved, even if Erika had been talking behind people's backs. Then, nervously glancing around, she offered something. Erika's social media account, as long as Ichinose promised not to tell anyone what they were doing. Marie looked down, scared she'd lose her place in class if anyone found out she was bad-mouthing others. People still saw her as the gloomy otaku girl. She begged Ichinose to keep quiet about what he heard at karaoke. Ichinose calmly asked if she was jealous of Minaguchi and the others. Marie didn't answer, but Agawa stepped in, saying she felt the same. Ichinose told them it's not a good idea to gossip about someone. Ichinose smiled and said he had been a loner for years. He thought the popular kids like Ahara and Minaguchi looked like they were always having fun, and it made him admire them. Agawa looked shocked and a little sad, her eyes filled with tears. Her quiet jealousy had grown from watching those happy classmates, and Ichinose understood how she felt. Agawa blushed hard, amazed by how kind and cool Ichinose was. She got too excited and started talking fast, thinking people like him were a miracle. Ichinose was confused, but before he could say anything, she shouted that she changed her mind and would secretly take charge from today, then ran off, leaving him standing there surprised. That night, Ichinose sat on his bed holding his phone, the room quiet as he moved to the second phase of the plan. He knew the girl wouldn't listen because he heard her voice through the intercom, so he decided to contact Diodoji using the account Agawa told him about. From now on, he had to pretend to be Hanabi. No matter how risky it felt, everything depended on this next step. Ichinose coldly planned to make Hanabi listen to him, knowing the real manipulator behind the bullying lies wouldn't make a fuss about it. He realized he just needed to create evidence by impersonating Hanabi well enough that others wouldn't doubt him. Understanding this was the most important part of his plan, his determined expression showed he was ready to take this risky step to expose the truth. Ichinose sat quietly, unsure if Hanabi kept in touch with someone on social media. But after years with her, he felt confident he could impersonate her. He knew Hanabi only used Lean, and never gave her account to anyone but him, realizing she had a second account where she revealed her twisted true feelings. His dark expression showed he was the only one who truly knew her twisted nature, and he was ready to use that knowledge against her. Ichinose realized he could use another app besides Line to impersonate Hanabi. Wanting to take advantage of getting in touch with someone, he quickly downloaded Skype and created a new account under Hanabi's name, then followed the account that Agawa-san had told him about. His determined expression showed he was ready to dive deeper into this dangerous deception to uncover the truth. Ichinose sat anxiously with his phone, realizing it hadn't even been 5 minutes since he started his plan. His tense expression showed he was desperately waiting for any response, gripping his device tightly as the silence stretched on, wondering if his risky attempt to impersonate Hanabi would actually work. Ichinose's eyes widened in shock and excitement as he saw Arakachi's message saying evening, mentioning that Hanabi also uses Skype and should follow, thanking him for today, and saying Yukishiro and others came to her house. His expression showed pure triumph as he realized she took the bait, knowing his plan to impersonate Hanabi had worked perfectly, and he was finally getting the evidence he needed. Ichinose read Arakachi's message saying good evening, Hanabi, mentioning she didn't know she used Skype, and thanking for the following, asking what happened today when Yukishiro and others came to her house. His satisfied expression showed he knew she took the bait, thinking that was easy, and now he just needed to continue pretending to be Hanabi. He was finally getting closer to uncovering the truth behind the bullying conspiracy. Ichinose sat alone staring at his phone with a troubled expression as he discovered something that would change everything. He had found the same username that Hanabi uses on her Line profile, realizing he could use this information to impersonate her without any major issues, since she never uses emojis in her messages. Ichinose stared at his phone in shock as someone eagerly demanded to know what was happening. While the mysterious person thanked Flower and Hanewo for the follow-back and revealed they wanted to talk about Yukishiro-senpai and others, mentioning that when Yukishiro-senpai came over, there was someone with her and questioning if she brought a boy with her. The person revealed they ran into each other after being kicked out, saying the person with Yukishiro was Ichinose, a childhood friend who bombarded them with questions, while someone asked if they were near her house. And Ichinose learned that Yukishiro said she didn't bully anyone, and the situation doesn't make sense. The person suggested that maybe Ichinose unintentionally offended her, and that he should apologize, revealing that she decided to apologize in front of everyone tomorrow, which made the girl lying in bed burst into uncontrollable laughter as she couldn't believe it, while Ichinose sat shocked and overwhelmed by this unexpected turn of events. The person mocked the situation, saying that apologizing for something she didn't do shows Yukishiro has a problem, and questioning how they could be bullied by a boring girl who reads books alone all day, declaring that if anyone's the bully, it's Ichinose. Then gleefully stating that even if she apologizes, what she did is unforgivable, and they can't wait to see what happens next, while reminding him what he needs to do next as Ichinose stood there looking tense and conflicted. The scene opens with Hanabi alone, her expression twisted with dark amusement as she plots to send photos of self-inflicted cuts to the school. She smirks, thrilled by her own plan, threatening the committee to cancel the trip just to spite the group she despises. Laughing to herself, she relishes the chaos, calling herself a genius as she traces the marks on her wrist, her specialty. Hanabi lounged with a smirk, casually asking if Ichinose had planned to attend school tomorrow. Wasn't he supposed to keep skipping? Her tone dripped with mocking amusement as she criticized how people selfishly involve others, yet seemed delighted by the chaos. When she suggested watching Yukishiro apologize would be entertaining, His eyes flickered with reluctant interest. A slow grin spread across her face. He agreed. Hanabi leaned in with a conspiratorial grin, instructing Ichinose to dramatically declare, "I won't forgive you," when he arrived. The bigger the scene, the faster things would progress. Her eyes sparkled with mischief as she finalized their plan, confirming his attendance tomorrow while casually mentioning Yukishiro would be apologizing to the teacher too. With a self-satisfied flick of her hair, she dismissed any concerns. "Leave it to me." The morning light filtered through the school windows as Ichinose arrived, his footsteps hesitant but determined. Before he could settle in, a voice cut through the quiet. "Do you have a second?" The question hung in the air, loaded with unspoken tension. Ichinose stood with a knowing smirk as someone questioned whether he had convinced Diodoji to come to school, or more accurately tricked her. His expression carried a mix of satisfaction and quiet calculation as he confirmed her attendance, suggesting everything would soon be resolved. Ichinose's expression hardened with quiet resolve as he revealed his plan. Diodoji-san would soon be forced to tell the truth, ending this situation once and for all. His eyes burned with conviction, unshaken even by his controversial methods. But then his voice darkened, hesitating before dropping the final bombshell. Daidoji had said terrible things about Yukishiro. Yukishiro's hands trembled slightly as she acknowledged the plan might hurt someone, but her voice steadied. She could bear the rumors and teachers' accusations, no matter how painful. Her glasses caught the light as she turned to Ichinose, eyes softening with quiet gratitude. He and Huki had stayed by her side when the whole class turned against her. Yukishiro adjusted her glasses with quiet resolve, her voice steady as she declared that was already enough for her. The tension in her frame eased as she met Ichinose's gaze. As long as he didn't hate her, she didn't care what others thought. Yukishiro adjusted her glasses, her voice soft yet steady as she suggested they head back. Ichinose's breath hitched for just a second before he nodded, his usual composure slipping into something more vulnerable. Huki smiled and gave a thumbs up in the hallway. Ichinose looked up surprised while Yukishiro sat beside him watching calmly through her glasses. Huki's excitement contrasted with Ichinose and Yukishiro's reserved reactions. Huki watched from the doorway as Ichinose stood uncertainly in the classroom while Yukishiro looked at him with gentle, caring eyes through her glasses. A girl watched nervously as the teacher told everyone to take their seats. Ichinose sat quietly while Hanabi smiled brightly nearby. Someone's hand reached for papers on the desk as the classroom settled in. The teacher spoke with determination, saying she would like to give time to Diodoji to apologize, and asking if it was true that someone admitted to bullying her. Ichinose watched quietly as Yukishiro confronted the situation with her usual caring nature, while tension filled the air around them. Yukishiro looked directly at him with serious eyes behind her glasses, waiting for an answer, as the weight of the accusation hung between them, asking if he was not going to apologize and pleading for him to wait. Ichinose stood frozen and uncertain as other students watched. The tension was thick as he struggled with his difficult choice. The teacher confronts a student about lying regarding bullying, giving them one chance to admit the truth while calling to Diodoji-san. But when they respond with confusion, she angrily declares it would have been better if they just admitted to lying since Yukishiro was only trying to apologize, leaving Ichinose and the others trapped in a tense hallway confrontation where accusations fly and no one knows what to believe. Ichinose declares he will show everyone proof that someone is lying. Accepting the challenge as confused students exchange uncertain glances and whispered questions with papers shuffling and the atmosphere growing heavy as everyone waits to see what evidence will be revealed in this dramatic confrontation. A girl stares in shock at cruel anonymous messages on her computer screen, mocking Yukishiro for apologizing about something she didn't do, calling her a shadowy girl who reads books all day and suggesting she would be the perfect bullying target, with each message filled with malicious laughter that makes her realize how terrible this situation has become. A girl desperately shakes her head saying, "No, you're wrong," as she clutches evidence showing a Skype conversation, asking if this is from Skype. Wait, is that Diodoji-san? With someone questioning seriously if this is real. While shocked classmates realize the bullying was all a lie, leaving everyone stunned as the digital proof exposes the deception that has torn their class apart. A classmate demands to know what Diodoji means, and tells her to explain herself, as the tension explodes in the classroom. While Diodoji desperately defends herself, saying she can prove it's not her, and that she's not the only one with that name, insisting it's a lie, and that's not her. Someone made it pretty easy by putting their picture and name on their profile. The boy stares in shock and asks if she's sure about that, while the girl defensively insists that doesn't prove anything. Yukishiro confronts Ichinusa about whether the account is his or not, demanding to know about the bullying accusation, and if he has any proof of that. She declares she can investigate as much as she wants to find out if it's him. Her eyes intense behind her glasses as she presses for answers. Ichinusa stands there looking increasingly uncomfortable and guilty, unable to give her straight responses. Ichinusa addresses his sensei, saying with this evidence, he thinks it's clear that Yukishiro is innocent. He looks serious and determined as he presents his case, while in the background, another student watches nervously. Ichinusa tells her he was just trying to clear the suspicions, asking if she understands, while Yukishiro responds that it's not like she blamed her for everything. The classroom falls silent as the teacher stands before them and all eyes watch the tense moment unfold. Ichinusa stands frozen with tears streaming down his face, overwhelmed by shock and pain. His classmates watch from below with concern as he breaks down completely, trembling and unable to control his emotions while everyone witnesses his collapse. Diodoji bows deeply, begging Yukishiro to forgive her for her actions, saying everyone was wrong and she was at fault. Yukishiro watches through her glasses with a sad but gentle expression, while classmates quietly observe this tense moment. Ichinusa stares in shock, asking what is it, while Huki calmly tells him there's something she needs to confirm about the school trip happening. Huki beams with excitement, shouting of course, with sparkling eyes and a huge smile, thrilled about the upcoming adventure. Huki throws fist in the air with pure joy, declaring, this time they shall do what's right and let the school administration know they're going on the trip. Her face glowing with excitement as she celebrates with her classmates who cheer around her. A teacher calls Diodoji to come with them, and Diodoji nervously says she'll be going now. Classmates apologize to Yukishiro, saying they're sorry for not trying to defend her and didn't do anything to help, admitting they didn't expect Diodoji to be like this. A classmate tells Yukishiro they weren't thinking straight when they said the trip would be cancelled, admitting she's the victim, and they're partly to blame too. Yukishiro quietly says it's okay, and the trip would have been cancelled because of that. The classmates apologize, saying they should have listened to her side, and it must have been hard for her, while Yukishiro looks down sadly and Ichinusa watches with concern. Ichinusa's friend thinks the best thing to do is change the subject since he understands how everyone feels, and Ichinusa quietly agrees. His friend warns that if they continue talking about this, it will just make Yukishiro feel worse. As Ichinusa walks away, Yukishiro calls out to thank him, her voice filled with gratitude. While their classmates watch this tender moment, Yukishiro looks up with tears in her eyes, smiling through her emotions, as she tells him he's her hero. The teacher shows the evidence and says it's clear that Yukishiro is innocent, while someone asks if the bullying was all a lie, as the truth finally comes out. Everyone learns that Diodoji's parents were also in trouble for this false report, making the situation even more serious. After everything was sorted out with the teacher, someone calls Ichinusa's name. Ichinusa says he can't go today and maybe next time, while his friends happily celebrate that everything is solved and want to go out today. As his excited friends rush off, promising to hold him to his word, Ichinusa thinks about how Diodoji never said who she talked to on Skype, and he was surprised when he found out. He realizes she didn't seem like someone who would protect a partner, but either way, it doesn't make her less guilty of what happened. Ichinusa thinks about how Hanabi always avoided difficult situations without breaking a sweat since they were kids, wondering if Diodoji has a soft spot for her. He realized she would have taken some precautions and expected that everything would be discovered at some point. The tension rises, as he explains that's why she came to him wanting information about that situation. But of course, he didn't tell her anything. Meanwhile, his teacher desperately wanted to know who the accomplice was, creating a web of secrets and suspicion. Ichinusa stood tense, his distrust clear as he refused to share his plans with Sensei. The air was heavy with unspoken tension, his words sharp. Hanabi was the mastermind behind everything, but revealing the truth would only complicate things. His expression hardened, resigned. Change had to come from her, but he saw no hope in her. The weight of his past with her, the manipulation, the control, lingered in his silence, leaving no room for optimism. The page ended with a quiet but firm resolve. Nothing would change. Ichinusa didn't trust Sensei enough to tell him the truth. Hanabi was the one pulling the strings behind everything, but he knew saying anything would just make things messy. His face was serious, almost tired. She had to change on her own, but deep down he didn't believe she ever would. After everything she'd done, he was sure nothing was going to get better. As Ichinose-kun drew near, a fierce determination blazed in Yukishiro-san's eyes as she declared, "The real victim here is Yukishiro-san." Her gaze, sharp and unwavering, then pierced through the tension as she boldly asked to talk. A soft, knowing smile graced Yukishiro-san's face as she looked toward Ichinose-kun. The evening sky, with its dramatic clouds unfolding behind them, hinting at the beginning of an extraordinary connection. Yukishiro-san sat on a swing, a gentle smile on her face as she thought, "This feels nostalgic." Ichinose watched her from nearby, reaching for a swing chain. Ichinose decided he would tell Yukishiro everything about Hanabi and him. Even though he wanted to bury his past, he knew she needed to know. Yukishiro then looked at him, asking if he remembered a few days ago when he mentioned someone tormenting everyone around him. Yukishiro, with a knowing glance, agreed it's about that person. She wants to talk to him, asking if that's okay. Ichinose, with surprise and concern, responded, "Of course," but he thought she didn't want to talk about it. He then walked closer to her, his expression serious, explaining thanks for caring, but this is something she needs to know. Yukishiro called his name Ichinose, her expression showing deep concern as she listened. It was a pathetic story, but Ichinose told her about the abusive relationship and how it was unbearable leading him to cut ties with Hanabi. He also shared details about Hanabi's distorted emotions that were directed towards him. A shocking confession hung in the air. Ichinose, with a determined gaze, apologized to Yukishiro-san, taking responsibility for the recent incident with Diodoji, and declared he would make it up to her for all the harm he caused. But Yukishiro, her expression filled with urgent concern, abruptly stopped him, insisting he didn't do anything wrong. Yukishiro, startled and slightly off balance, blushing fiercely, stares at Ichinose and stutters nervously. Ichinose looks at Yukishiro, his expression concerned as he tells her it must have been hard, apologizing for not realizing it sooner, explaining it was right in front of his eyes. Yukishiro responds, her gaze thoughtful, that she wishes she had supported him earlier, saying he wouldn't have had to go through it alone if she had realized earlier. Then quietly apologizes. Their expressions convey a deep understanding and regret between them. With tears streaming down her face, Yukishiro tries to explain why she is crying like this, revealing it is because she feels so frustrated for not realizing how much Ichinose was suffering. As Ichinose stands in shock, his eyes wide, Yukishiro, with a soft, radiant smile, reveals her heart, proclaiming she always loved him. Her expression is one of pure affection and hope, while Ichinose's face is a mix of disbelief and shock.